Morning, all. So, news of the day, preview for today, just the one hockey game. I'm wearing Bruins gear because it's the day after they got knocked out. It's tradition that for Vancouver, Boston, Dallas, and this goes back decades to where when they get knocked out of the playoffs, they wear their jersey the next day. Because I've always kind of found it odd that people will wear jerseys of a team while they're in the playoffs and everybody has flags everywhere. And then the day after they get knocked out of the playoffs, nobody's wearing jerseys anymore and the flags all disappear. So, um, yeah, it's bizarre. Now, that might just be something that's British Columbian related. No idea. It's weird. It's like you could tell when the Canucks were out of the playoffs just by looking at people around you. You wouldn't even have to know the results. But yeah, so when Boston's knocked out, I wear their jersey the day after. So, which is kind of too bad because I got some new hats and I was like, oh, that's the only hat I've ever had that's matched that jersey. It'd be fun to wear that for the preview news video. But then Boston gets knocked out, so I'll have to wear that jersey tomorrow. But yeah, so Colorado and Vegas is the one game tonight. Vegas at home, they're going to look to use that home crowd to avoid another game seven. They had 7 games against Minnesota, and while they're in a position to win this series, they'd also probably like to have a couple of days off. So the rumor from John Shannon, and normally he's very reliable on this kind of thing, is that the series between Tampa and the Islanders will start on Sunday, and then the series involving the winner of this matchup and the Montreal Canadiens starts on Monday. So nice long break for Montreal, which they desperately need. And Vegas could have a couple of days off themselves if they win tonight. Otherwise, it gets a little bit dicey going to a game seven and going back to Denver, right? But Vegas has controlled most of this series. They really have. Game one was an absolute mess. You throw that aside, it's only one game. The rest of the series has really been under Vegas's control. So unless Grubauer is able to steal one, unless Colorado gets a couple of early goals and finds a way to hold the lead, yeah, we likely see Vegas move on to the next round tonight. And then we can have the discussion about the Hart finalists after that as well. Although I'm sure the discussion will be out there today anyways. Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews are your 3 finalists. So your last name had to start with M to be in the finalists for this award. Just a rule. I don't make it up. So, yeah, and of course, McDavid out in the first round. They didn't get any wins. Matthews out in the first round. They were up 3-1 and they lost. And for McKinnon, again, if they lose tonight against Vegas, that's where we get into the whole conversation about the Hart Trophy and all this. But again, they're regular season awards. And the idea that, you could push them till after the postseason. Well, no, because, again, the postseason is its own beast altogether, and the regular season's its own. And yeah, so the Hart finalists, I don't have any problem with any of them. I think they were all really good players this year. They were really important to their teams. But part of the conversation we can have now is, so your Hart finalists, does this mean that these are 3 players that if you shut them down, you knock their team out of the playoffs? And I think the answer with these 2 is yes. And it certainly looks like McKinnon, who hasn't had a point for the last couple of games here, the answer could be yes for him as well. So that may very well be what the Hart Trophy's showing us right now. Can change from year to year, but for right now it's showing us these are the guys who may be the most valuable, and if you shut them down, it's easiest to knock their teams out. Carolina, who've been knocked out, Vinny Trocheck, revealing that he was dealing with an MCL sprain. Doesn't require any kind of surgery. Couple weeks off, he thinks he'll be fine. He was just playing through pain and discomfort in that last game. And you think about some of the hits he was throwing, Trocheck's a warrior. Dougie Hamilton, who may very well have played his last game for Carolina, he's a UFA this summer, stated that they lost to a team that was $18 million over the cap. And it's true. I mean, they lost to a team that, if this was a regular season, would be way over the cap. The one thing with this is, and there's been that discussion in hockey for a long time, going back to when Chicago didn't win back-to-back cups, and part of the reason may very well have been that after you win and all your contracts are up, you have to give guys extensions, and you probably can't afford to keep them together, so you have to sell guys off. It is a punishment for teams' success, and so that's been a debate going back over a decade, and I think Tampa Bay maybe reignites that debate. The idea that they're going back, they're trying to go back to back, and they've got basically the same lineup they had last year. And yes, you could point and say, well, they're well over the cap. You could also counter with it's almost the same team, and it'd be kind of nice to see. I mean, I'm torn on the idea of dynasties, like a dynasty's 3 cups in 4 years. I do think that if the NHL had an actual dynasty, if you had Tampa Bay win 3 or 4 cups in a row, I think that would generate a lot of interest because people would want to see, so who's finally going to knock these guys off? Is Tampa really as good as what people are saying? So I think a dynasty helps league interest. I don't know how much it helps general fan interest. Like, do people get tired of that? I'm too young to remember with the Islanders when they went to the Stanley Cup final for the 5th time, if there was a lot of eye rolling, like, oh, they're back again. But I also remember that dynasty was kind of revered in that time. And we still look back on that dynasty and realize that Islanders team of the early 80s was one of the best ever. So, yeah, and Hamilton did throw out there too. They're a very good team, and he has no problem with the Tampa Bay Lightning personally. But I'm sure it would be frustrating to see a team that's got a financial advantage over you in terms of who they can throw on the ice and how far they are over the cap. I would also counter with Vasilevsky's the one that's gotten Tampa Bay as far as they've gotten to this point. Kucherov's been a huge success, but man, Vasilevsky's so good. Speaking of so good, Barry Trotz, who knocked these guys out last night. The question you'd have to ask is, so if Barry Trotz had been behind the bench for the Bruins, and if Bruce Cassidy had been behind the bench for the Islanders, would the Islanders have still won the series? My answer to that would be no. I like Bruce Cassidy. I think he's a good coach, but I think Trotz is probably the best coach in the game. And there are other very good coaches in the game, absolutely, yes. But, Trotz, I think the praise he's getting again, I think it's nice. Nice to see him get that because for many, many years of his coaching career, he was kind of obscure in Nashville. He was there forever. He got more wins out of that Nashville team than they had any right getting regularly. But then he goes on to Washington, eventually wins the Stanley Cup, and now in New York for the Islanders, he's got them to the Final Four 2 years in a row. So that's pretty fantastic, and it definitely deserves a lot of praise. And we'll see how they do against Tampa Bay in the next round. Last year, they took Tampa Bay to 6 games. We'll see how it goes this year. The preview for that will be done this morning, so don't worry about it. Trotz being praised, I'm here for it. Speaking of praise, Canuck fans have to be kind of torn on this. Remember, as the season wore down, we heard about all the Canucks wanted out. Nobody wanted to stay. That turned out not to be the case. No players have asked for a trade. GM's going to get fired. No. Coach, they're treating the coach like crap. They're not making him an offer. He's just going to leave. Nope. They're not making offers to Ian Clark. He's one of the best goalie coaches in the game, and I can't believe the Canucks are just going to let him leave. No, now he's back. So that's why I don't get into all the hand-wringing and freaking out. Because, he's sticking around. He's staying. They added a couple of assistant coaches as well yesterday. And, if you liked the assistant coach or the associate or the goalie coach, probably the guy you like is sticking around. So, Ian Clark stays with the Canucks. And I thought it was nice that on Instagram, the announcement for that was that the top comment underneath it was Thatcher Demko, kind of celebrating that. So, Demko really appreciates what Ian Clark's done to get him ready to be a starter in the NHL. So, cannot be overstated how important he's been to the Canucks for the last few years here. First with Markstrom and now with Demko. And eventually DiPietro as well, right? Minnesota made some news yesterday, hiring Ray Shero as the advisor to Bill Guerin. So giving Bill Guerin a little bit of assistance in the form of a former general manager in Ray Shero. It can't hurt. Can't hurt to have an advisor, somebody to call, and what do you think of this? And what do you think we should do with this? And so that's a good call. And Bill Guerin's done a decent job turning things around in Minnesota. Really, a lot of what's happened with Minnesota is he went out and got Cam Talbot, who played fantastic, and then Kaprizov. You got Kaprizov signed, and you just put him on the ice, and you go, hey, look, that fixed a lot of things. So yeah, Minnesota smart move there. Lucas Reichel has signed his entry-level contract with the Chicago Blackhawks. This was coming anyways, so it's official now. It was made official yesterday by the Hawks. And so we'll see where Reichel fits into that lineup. He was projected, honestly, last year his profile was kind of all over the place. There were some that had him ranked higher than where he went in the draft. Some had him ranked lower. And so we'll see how Reichel turns out in the NHL. But exciting time for German hockey. Tuukka Rask may need surgery. So they're kind of being cloak and dagger on this. He may very well need surgery. For Tuukka, it was a rough playoffs. Here's the thing, though. So I keep seeing people say, "Oh, I appreciate Tuukka Rask playing through discomfort," and clearly he wasn't himself. And I agree. I don't understand why Cassidy still had him in there in Game 6. You had a goaltender that clearly was not 100%, was clearly fighting something. I do not understand. And if you don't have faith in Swayman, if the answer is, well, you can't go to a rookie, I can't have Swayman, well, it's a good thing they have Halak. So it's the one thing that from last night's game I am baffled by. Because we all knew that Rask was fighting something and wasn't 100%. And throughout the series, we kept hearing that he was going to be sat, probably wasn't going to play one of the games during that series. And I don't know. I mean, look, Vegas for Game 1, they sat Fleury, and of course Leonard went in. Everybody lost their minds because they lost that game and got destroyed. But Fleury's been really good with that rest. So I don't. It is one thing that bothers me from last night, watching that and going, wow, that was ugly. And you just have to wonder, because the Bruins do play really well in front of Swayman. And I know they didn't have a chance to show that during the playoffs. It's too bad, because during the regular season, when Swayman was in there, Bruins just played really, really well. So I would expect Swayman to be the starter next year. Rask's not ruling out a return. He's not talking exactly about the contract, but he's not ruling out a return. I would be kind of surprised if he returns, though. I think it's time for Boston to have a minor facelift and try to change things on the fly, similar to what the Capitals did when they let Holtby go. Similar to that, right? Devon Shore signs a 2-year extension with the Edmonton Oilers for an average of $850,000 over 2 years. So $1.7 million for Devon Shore. Of course, they lost Nygaard, and now they've lost Gaetan Haas. Gaetan Haas has signed a 5-year deal in Switzerland. So his NHL career is over, but that's some good job security. European teams, 5 years seems like a lot for European teams. So kudos to them for getting competitive and offering these guys, some serious job security. I liked Haas, I did, but at the same time, Edmonton needs to figure out their depth, and they need to make some improvements there. So, Haas moving on might be the best thing for him and for the team. I wish him only the best. Like I said, I liked him. The finish wasn't there. The effort was. And I always thought he was a hard-working player. So we'll see how things go for him in Switzerland, but his time in Edmonton is done. And we'll see what Edmonton does in the offseason as well, because they definitely need to add. But they also have to wonder if Ryan Nugent-Hopkins were to leave, how do you fill that spot in the roster? Because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has really done kind of a little bit of everything. So we'll see what they do. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Who do you think wins tonight, Colorado or Vegas? Let me know that as well. And I will talk to you again soon.